fire. I don't want to give it away yet. And they'll say, you ask a question and ChatGPT kind of gives a weak answer, like I can't do this or I can't answer that. And you respond, bro, just BRO, bro. And it'll give you the answer. It'll come back and answer the question. And so I think like this, I would go to if Claude gave me this answer, I'd go, bro, and see what it said the next time.
Well, I can go back.
It's pretty politically
You can
sensitive.
do better.
And folks, that's why you should pay a few bucks a month for the sweet, sweet Patreon content.
Is this real? What you've put in here?
I copied it right out of.
Oh, that's amazing!
All right.
Wait a second. I'm gonna see if I can use that as a script. Yo, my dude, you want the lowdown on snagging those sweet, sweet clients? I got you covered. Sorry, let's do that without that little thing at the end.
That was great.
Yo, my dude, you want the lowdown on snagging those sweet, sweet clients? I got you covered. There you go.
Beautiful.
It's the next sentence with look for the ones who are vibing with what you are putting out there.
If they're not vibing with you, Oliver, I mean, if they're not vibing with what you're putting out there, they're probably mid, right? They're probably, it's probably feta. I don't know. I'm just making.
I love how it's like lightly casual, like and peeps on LinkedIn. It's just slightly peppered with ridiculousness. It's beautiful.
But it's the secret sauce, my guy. It's the secret sauce.
My guy. I feel like maybe this has learned something from you. Do you let the microphone sit open on Claude when you're just walking around talking to yourself? Because I think that's what's happening here.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Consultants Saying Things. I am Chris Lockhart, and I'm joined today by Wendy Keene and Oliver Kronk, and also Phil Yanoff. And one of the things that we have wanted to talk about for a while is a series of questions actually submitted by Jean Gehring, who you can go find her on LinkedIn. We'll put the link to her LinkedIn on the thing, but she submitted a couple of questions, and these are really around the whole idea of how do you sort of find and sell to and land clients, right? And how do you find that new business? And how do you do it in sort of an honest way that is meaningful and delivers value and all of those good things? So, when we're tackling this, how do you ask? It's always the, what can I do to put you in the car today, right? Like, how do you ask that question without asking that question? Because one of the things I've always struggled with is I hate salesmen, and I hate all the standard sales approaches because they come off as phony, and I hate doing those things, right? Yeah. And all the training I've ever had on sales, it's like, oh, it works. I'm like, I get it. Maybe it works on everyone inside the bell curve, but I'm outside the bell curve. It doesn't work on me, and I can't bring myself to do it. And it's always been a struggle, right?
I don't want to be that person if it works.
The thing is, nobody does, right? And so, we would teach salespeople, I did this for a while, right? When you teach them, you have to start with this whole thing, like no one trusts a salesperson, right? And you'd do exercises in the room and you'd ask people, what's the lowest trusted thing? And it turns out, like, when you look at it, it's like, look, even attorneys are more trustworthy than salespeople. No one trusts salespeople because the thing is, in the beginning, you can see, there's a relation. They're trying to get to a place, and you don't trust that they're going to have your best interest in mind. So one of the things we would do when we were teaching people to sell is to say, you can be that cat if you want to be that cat, but you don't have to be that cat. And the thing is, you're going to have trouble doing it if you feel like you're being dishonest. So instead, adopt the idea that you're a country doctor. And you're there to help people. You're just trying to find people who are sick. That's all. And the question is, maybe you can help them and maybe you can't. But if you can just say, and to me, that feels like the most consultative approach to this of all. It's like, I don't know if I can help you. Let's talk about it and see what happens. That was brilliant.
Amazing, Phil. Amazing.
Hark, what a segue one hears.
Have I told you about Magic Mind?
Nice.
Yeah. So, look, where do you even begin to find people to have that conversation, though, Phil? Right? Because you're not going to walk up to someone, hand them a business card, and say, "Hey, let me tell you about the thing that I do. Maybe I can help you." Are we leveraging friends? Are we leveraging our network? Like, where do we find these people initially? How do you have that initial find?
So I'll jump in on that one. I know we always say this, but I think it's really important. Start with the clients that we know, right? And find more ways to help them, right? As Phil was saying before, it reminds me of one of the most impactful things that a consulting manager ever said to me, which was, Wendy, you don't have to do sales. You just have to find new ways to help people, which really speaks to how I think, right? So current clients, and then leveraging your current clients or partners or colleagues to help get referrals, I think is a very nice way to find more people. And then just in that vein of being really authentic, I think there's the give to get, right? So thought leadership and participation in communities and events really comes in here, whether it's online publishing an article or speaking at an event, because of course you're giving people something valuable, but you're also establishing your expertise. You meet a lot of people through that, and then you nurture those relationships that can become clients over time.
Yeah, and of course, there's also the idea where they've already been sold something that you or your company is offering, right? And you have maybe an opportunity to expand on that, like cross-selling, upselling.
Yeah, I really like what Wendy was saying here, because I think this is the often overlooked thing. It's like this feeling that we have to sell to someone new. Yeah, there's absolutely we need to do some of that, but we as consultants I totally overlook that cross-selling opportunity. Like, if all it requires really is to be a little bit less siloed into your current engagement, and just sort of lift your head up a little bit and go, hey, what else is going on here? And what other things aren't quite adding up that actually I think myself or the firm I work for might better help with that and show a little bit of proactivity. And of course, you have to do this sensitively. But I think most people do. Like, particularly anyone coming from the mindset of I don't want to sell. Well, you're probably going to come across far more genuinely than perhaps you're going to think you will. And I have a lot of conversations like this with my teams. Just park that uncomfortable part of this. Yeah, you're knowledgeable in your field. You know what you're talking about. People will want to talk to you about this stuff, and it doesn't have to be about you pushing something. It can just be about having a conversation to start with and see where that goes. And yeah, sure, a lot of those conversations won't go anywhere, and that's fine. But some of them will. And it's a numbers game to an extent. But I think as long as you do it authentically and start with, as Wendy was saying, a place of trying to give before you receive, this is where I think people go wrong. Is like, oh, right, I need to go to sales mode. So now I need to send out a cold email to this person and try and sell them something. It's like, no. Just be you and just have a conversation with someone that you know who you think has got some stuff that you might be able to help them with.
I love that country doctor thing, Phil, that you mentioned, right? It's like, I might be able to help. What can I do to help you? Maybe I can help here. Maybe I can't.
Yeah. So I have a question for you guys. So have any of you ever had to do this as a bare earth start, or greenfields, they call it, right? But have you ever been in a spot where it's like, you know what, I'm not showing up with a book of business, or we're trying to get something, maybe I was out on my own. Have you ever been in that spot and had to do that? And what did you do?
I'm in that spot right now.
Okay.
So, Scott Logic isn't just doing the sustainability stuff because we're a B Corp and we're a social enterprise. Yes, that's one of the reasons we're doing it. But we're also doing it as a large part because we want to open doors into new companies that we aren't talking to right now. And so actually a lot of my strategy right now is, as Wendy was saying, offer something. And you'd be surprised that off the back of offering something, the response that you get to that. I think there's a reason why consultancies use thought leadership as a marketing tool, because it works. Right. The trick is to find an angle that is insightful and is also in demand, and is there's a reasonable degree of uniqueness about it. So it's not just same old that everyone is talking about. But and clearly there are only times, I think there are only certain points in my career where I feel like I've been working on something that is truly quite differentiating. It's not just a rinse and repeat type thing. So it helps right now that I think the stuff a lot of stuff we're working on, my teams, is quite new, novel, and quite timely. But there have been other times where it's just like, Oliver, go and work your network. Who could we go and speak to? And and that's tools like Sales Navigator, which I know we've talked about with Richard Bliss, I think, and things like that. Yeah, go and look at your network. Go and think about, who did I used to work with who perhaps would be open to a conversation, just going for a coffee, and start there. It doesn't have to all be. There's a degree of serendipity about some of this stuff as well that I think is perhaps missing.
In having also done greenfield as well, Phil, Oliver, literally everything you're saying, exactly spot on. So I started my own consulting firm. I actually had a couple clients I brought, but that's not a lot, and that doesn't last long. So very much the thought leadership, community building, even community building in my own city, right, to make those networks. And also because I had left a consulting firm and had really good relationships with those people who also wanted to come work for me. It was like, hey, if you can close business, I can help you work there. Right? You want to work for me again? Help me close business, and we're going to get to do great things together. So leveraging that part of the network too.
I've had. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, because I want to wrap something around these stories. But go ahead.
So I've been in this position as well. The slightly different slant, right? So you work, in one place, you establish some relationships, you go to another place, right? You want to bring those relationships with you. And then you find out that the new place already has someone who owns that account, right? And suddenly any kind of sales that you do, any business that you do there, it's kind of not your own anymore, right? Even though you had the relationships, because a partner owns it or whatever, right? And so I've had to then go, well, I've got to find a new logo. I've got to find some other company that maybe I've never done work for before. I have no context of, and so I've tended to look, as I think a lot of people do. Well, what industry am I interested in maybe approaching a particular problem? What problems could I possibly solve? And then what are the companies in that industry? And then who do I know that work at those companies in those industries? And like, that's about as cold calling as I've ever felt comfortable doing. Hey, person, just checking in. How are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. We haven't talked in a year or whatever it is, right? Just wanted to see what you were doing. And I mean, it feels really inauthentic. I got to be honest with you, right? It's just like, and that when you towards the end of the year, when you start getting pings from people on LinkedIn that haven't talked to you in 2 years, just wanted to see how you're doing. No, you want to try to sell me something is what you really want to do. Yeah.
And so part of what I was getting at in all of these, right, you all referenced having had experiences with people that knew and trusted you, and you'd already had that piece coming forward, right? And so I think that's really valuable, and I wouldn't want to underplay that for anybody. If you are new, if you just got out of school, if you are just starting out, this is a terrible time to go hang a shingle because you don't know what you're doing. And you ought to go find people to hang around who do know what they're doing and start to build that network that way. Because there is, like you said, Chris, there's nothing worse than being inauthentic. And you have to be inauthentic because you're desperate to eat, right? And the smell of fear is just terrible for you, for them. It just doesn't help you build an authentic relationship because you do need something. There's nothing more powerful than being able to go up and have that conversation the way we talked about earlier, right? Then like, I don't know if I can help you or not. And so let's figure that out. If there's a spot for me to help you, that'd be great. And if it isn't, let's find someone who can, or let's find out if it's a problem worth solving or whatever. But in all those places, you being desperate and saying, you know what? Here's the deal. I got a mortgage, I got kids, or whatever I've got in my life that I've got a nut that I've got to crack, right? Term of art. But, I got money that I've got to make so much, my rent, whatever. If you're in that spot, that's a tough place to negotiate from. It's a terrible place to negotiate from. It's a terrible place to have to sell from, because you can't afford to be authentic because you got to sell something. You're muted, Chris.
still don't know how to use these tools. I want to I want to follow up on something you said though, because I think it's interesting. I've gotten better at it. I'm still not very good at it, but I want, Oliver and Wendy, your perspective, right? Phil, you said, right? It's like, hey, maybe I can help you. And if I can't, do you know someone who might need help? Right. And I've never felt comfortable asking for that referral from people, right? Because it's like, I was really interested in you until I realized that you can't help me. So find me somebody else, that it just feels like ick. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think this is about. Sorry,
go ahead. You go, because I'll just talk if you let me.
I was going to say, I think it's about investing in relationships such that doesn't feel ick, right? Because it's going to sound really corny, but I think as someone who is very geeky and technically focused, the realization that life is about relationships and choosing to invest in some of those sort of professional relationships, such that you can pick up the phone after, say, 4 or 5 years of not working with that person, but it's a bit like calling up an old friend. It's there's that foundation of, you did great stuff for me back in the day, so I'm willing to kind of give you my time. And by the way, if I haven't got something for you right now, do you know what? I know that Bob or Alice or someone else in my network, I'd happily refer you. So it's kind of about what goes around comes around to a degree. I think it's like that short-termist mindset, which might win you a bit of business or help you with the gross margin on an engagement, won't win you the work that you need in the future. But I feel like I do take your point about if you're in a really desperate spot, you can come across as inauthentic, and that explains some somewhat toxic sales behaviors at times. I get that. And then the other thing you were saying was around, depending on what level of seniority you are, does it make sense for you to go out hunting, or should you be farming? So we've talked about hunting and farming before, right? Should you actually be riding the coattails of someone who is more experienced that you can learn from? Because I've had the benefit of learning from some very charismatic leaders who are just make selling like a breeze. They don't really sell because they just have these amazing relationships with people. They trust them, and they just sort of open doors, and things sort of seem to magically happen for them. Well, they don't, because they've invested an awful lot in those relationships and their track record and so on and so forth. But from the outside looking in, it's like, how the hell do they do that? So, well, it's something that they've developed. It's a skill and a network they've developed over time.
Yeah, that's right. And I think so that to that point, that's what they're doing. And you don't start with that. None of us, rarely do we get that kind of start, right? You might just be lucky for any number of reasons, but most people don't start with that kind of network or the experience or even how they go about making that ask. Because even I have my own ideas about if I'm going to call up somebody that I haven't talked to in a few years, I am not there to call them with an ask. Because, unless that was just a very special relationship and they're like, I know that I built up so much goodwill that it's okay for me to call and say, hey, I need something from you. Can you help me? I think that's rarely it. And, it has always been my strategy in those conversations to simply talk to them about what they are working on and what's going on in their lives, and having that conversation and just ask, be genuinely curious, see what you can learn. You are exploring, right? You're an investigator in that spot. And eventually the right kind of person looks back and goes, well, hold on a second, Oliver, what are you doing these days? And you get to then they're ready for that answer. But, if you can start out by asking them all these great questions about where they are, you are getting notes, right? You are eliciting useful information about where they are, and they are talking to you about their favorite subject themselves.
But they know there's an agenda, right? I know when people call me up and they're like, hey, what are you working on? I'm like, what do you want? Just get to what you want.
So if you're in that spot, and I do this all the time, right? My kids will say, what are you doing? And I will look at them and say, I know you don't care what I'm doing. Tell me what you need. And let's have that conversation so I can just shortcut that. Yeah. But that is a deep relationship, right? We know that there, like you said, that there can be an agenda. And you might have that conversation with somebody. It's like, Chris, you know what? I don't really like you that much, but here's a deal. I need
I
some
hear that all the time.
Yeah, I know. It's like, right. It's like, really, I wouldn't call you if I didn't feel like I had to, but here I am and I need some work. So, I mean, it could be anything like that, right?
Right.
But, I think you can pull this off any number of ways, but doing something beats doing nothing every time.
Well, I'm kind of curious, like, Wendy, I know you're independent, right? And well, run your own stuff. Like, how do you even figure out? So let's say you've refreshed the connection over whatever, a coffee, a Norwegian, leg of lamb, right? Right. So you've refreshed a connection with an acquaintance, and you're asking the kinds of questions that Phil's talking about, trying to, how do you even figure out if there's something there? What are some signs to you that, hey, they might, how do you make that connection between what you think you might be able to do and what you're sensing maybe some of their issues are?
Yeah, well, I think there's multiple pieces to this. I think one, of course, stating the obvious, but the questions we all will ask are different depending on our focus and what we bring to the table, right? So I'm not, and I know people do this, but I'm not the person that's like, just, hey, what just keeps you up at night, right? So I'm going to specifically be keen on things on executing strategy or transformation, things I can help with and would add value with. So I think there's an intent to that conversation with the backdrop of everything you all said, right? These very authentic, long-term human relationships and not being there with urgency to have to sell something, right? But I think another thing is, the signs of people, right? I think when business moves swiftly, I think that's a really good sign. I think we naturally feel a human connection that might open the door to share options and things like that. I think another part, by the way, of just making this easy, and I don't mean to you can't do it too soon, but give people easy ways to onboard onto the journey, right? So that might be an assessment. That might be a workshop. It's giving people these little hints of what you can do, especially if they're kind of interested. So, and they might be thinking, how do I start? But that feels like, oh, how do I engage? And is this a big thing? Just kind of giving those things so that people have something to say yes to, or could ask about, or think about, or even refer to somebody else.
It gives them a preview, right? It's like a hook.
Yeah. I totally subscribe to that approach and use it quite a lot. So, what? Just a bit careful here. People are watching this, they don't know. They'll know my MO.
Oh, here comes Oliver.
He's about to do the thing that he's talking about doing on
sales approach.
Things.
It's his move. His big move.
Oh, he's making his power move now. Oh my God, I must be special. Anyway, so yeah, I've done this a few times, like kind of the kind of problem solving workshop. Okay, so you've got this sticky thing, you've got this new big thing that's going to make or break your career or your performance appraisal this year. Let's just spend a day or two, and I'll get some people in the room who I think would help with that, and we'll just offer that for free with no obligation or no expectation that it goes anywhere other than we just have a really interesting chat, because we'll learn a lot about what your world looks like, and hopefully we can help you with some things. So that's led to a whole bunch of things doing that. And of course, this isn't one size fits all. Maybe it's that in some instances. Maybe it's getting them involved in some kind of event or something else in other instances. It comes back also to kind of, what's the relationship like? Is this a deep relationship, or is this something you're building? And therefore, to Wendy's point, you might need to prove your capability a little bit. Is this the sort of person that will see through? They just want to get straight down to it. So to Chris's point, if I'm selling to Chris, maybe I don't dance around. I go, Chris, you know what? I think we should just do this. And if Chris thinks that's rubbish, he'll just go no. Or if he loves it, he'll say yes, hopefully. So it's about kind of understanding who you're working with and what the relationship strength and what you can do with that relationship off from day one.
So when you are trying to establish rapport, if it's someone you haven't talked to in a while, or someone you don't know, and you're trying to understand and you're asking good questions, right, about what's going on in their world, and you're trying to figure out, okay, oh, you mentioned data strategy. Okay, that's interesting, right? Because now I can blah, blah, blah. It sounds like you have to have, as a good consultant, you have to develop, right, several different ways of approaching folks, dependent, like reading the room, reading the style, right? And then adapting your go to market technique. That's so salesy. Your approach, right? Your approach to dealing with those folks. Does that sound right? Or is that obvious?
Yeah, well, I think it's right. And let me say, I was thinking about something adjacent to this morning. And the thing is, I think that we can, and that hopefully this is useful to people, and hopefully this, that we'll have outline a few tools that they can use, and someone will pick up one thing or another that they can put in their toolbox and use. But one of the things that we're kind of assuming is that you're pretty good at EQ, right? So knowing which of these tools to reach in the bag and pull out is a sign of emotional intelligence. I know I used a term of art, emotional quotient, we sometimes call it, but having emotional intelligence to figure out what's the right place at this time to get a little closer to someone, and how can I get a little closer to them? That is an EQ tool, right? That's you figuring out where they are and being able to read that landscape. And by the way, we've said this before. Let me say it again. This works best when you're not in a hurry, when you can move at their pace and not have to force them to move at your pace. Because, someone who wants to solve a problem and decides to use you to do it, they're going to do that on their time frame, not yours.
Not according to your sales cycle or the end of the month, quota or whatever.
It has to be a pretty tight dance for you to be involved with people. And I've been in that spot before where they know how we dance, they know how they dance, and they knew that I need to get this closed by 12:31. That happens sometimes, but if you'll know that if you're in that spot. For most people, where the real tension comes from, where the real frustration comes from someone trying to close a deal, is they've got a time cycle in their head. And there could be really legitimate stuff. It might be terrible excuses. I got a quarterly thing and I have to hit that. Or, another place that tension shows up is you say you've got this problem and I've got a resource, and that resource will be not available to me at this point on the calendar, but they are available now. That's kind of one of those times you want to kind of get them closer. But again, you can kind of lay this back out and say, look, this gets a little easier to solve if we could do something now. Might be a little harder future. I mean, can we press the easy button on this thing or not?
The corollary to that, right, is, I've got a body on the bench. What do you need? Oh, you need project management? Yeah, he can do that, Oh, and it's like,
gosh, he's so good at it. You can do project management, right?
Right.
You've read that book. Excellent.
Can you get certified?
Right.
Can you get certified before the project's? It's crazy.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Wendy, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, just to echo Phil's point about the EQ, I think this is everything. Just putting yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to. Strategy, execution, and intentional design of organizations for me sounds really different, from strategic planner to business architecture team leader to CIO of a big company and a CIO of a mid-sized company, let alone nonprofits and governments. So being able to sort of reflect their language, reflect their challenges and opportunities. And of course, the offerings are different, even to the extent that, I will hear people say, oh gosh, have you been in our organization? You're exactly talking about the way things work here, right? So that's just aiming the language to the person and really caring.
That's music. If someone says that to you, sounds like you work here, music, you understand them, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Is that
music, not heavy metal?
folk music, Norwegian folk music.
Could even be a sonnet, perhaps.
Yeah, a sonnet, even, you might say. That's for all you Patreon subscribers who know about the Shakespearean sonnet thing going on. So is that the secret sauce then? Is the secret sauce EQ? Is that really what this comes down to?
I was going to come on to echo that point that the other two have made, really, which is, and I think some people are blessed with EQ at birth, or perhaps not quite at birth, but that they maybe have parents that nurture that sort of mindset and that empathy, and others that don't. And I think I was one of the people that landed in my mid-20s and went, I need to work on my comm skills, and I think there's previous episodes where I've talked about this, right? Where I consciously went off and went, I'm a geek, right? And in order to progress my career, I need to get out of my cupboard and be able to engage with people properly. And I think some people realize that and do something about that. Other people kind of get really frustrated because they can't do some things because they don't have that in their kit bag. And so I think, I particularly me on this podcast talk about technical consultants, and they're great cats. But often that hasn't been the skill that they've needed to acquire, particularly if they've been on the kind of implementation side of consulting, and all of a sudden they've progressed to a more senior role, and then the expectation is they're going to start doing some selling. Well, whoa, hang on, that's just a massive sort of leap that they're having to make. So, and unfortunately,
it's okay, right? It's okay that you don't have EQ, because it's not for everyone to be front and center sales mode, right?
Yeah, and I guess this is perhaps where you need to understand, where do you play on the pitch? Are you in offense, or are you in defense?
Translate that into American English. What is it? Are
you a quarterback, or are you? I don't know. This is where
gotcha.
Oh my gosh. He's starting to refer to American football terms like that means something.
I'm trying to use empathy here. I'm trying to use words that you understand.
No, it's lovely. We say never send a squirrel to do a duck's job.
What's that mean?
I mean, there are things, if this job requires swimming and high IQ or high EQ and you don't have it, get a wingman or get someone to help you with that part.
I love that.
Or send someone, right? Yeah.
Someone to compensate for the fact that you don't have the EQ, but they may not have the technical knowledge that you've got, right? And
here's the thing, that also requires some EQ in understanding what your limitations and your weaknesses are. And
it also takes a little humility, right?
I don't look there. I don't look there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's talk about that, right? So you're going to, all right. I wasn't born with big EQ, so I need to find someone that has big EQ, and we're going to partner up. How do I leverage? So 2 questions. How do I leverage my network to find those people? But then secondarily, I'm in my network. How do I leverage my network to then find business? Is that your dog? Does your dog is got big EQ?
He's got a big mouth. That's going true.
So how do I use my relationships as part of all of this? I don't want to bring my friends into the business, do I? Or do I?
This is about internal networking first, external networking second. And the larger the firm, the more important that internal network is. I remember someone telling me when I joined the Big Four firm, most useful piece of advice I think I got was, it's all about your network. And I think the bigger the firm, the more important that is. If you're a small firm and you've identified that you're all super introverted, super smart IQ people, but struggle with the EQ, then maybe you need to kind of go and add someone to the team. But otherwise, in most cases, it's just connecting internally and finding that person and finding the win-win relationship where you get something, they get something out of it. So the classic one for me is, I'm often paired with more commercially savvy people, and I'm brought in to be the technologist in the room, and it's where can you build that sort of relationship with a sales counterpart? Or if it's the other way around, how do I go and make friends with the person that knows they need to be more commercially savvy, but they're struggling with that skill, but they're very good at what they do. They're an SME in their field. It's matchmaking. And I guess in some cases, some people do some of that matchmaking for you, but in other cases, you need to go out and find those people yourself.
But that's in a Big Four, right? There are 300,000 employees in the firm kind of thing.
It scales up and it scales down.
What about you don't have that scale, Wendy? What about that? I mean, you're not pairing yourself up. I don't know. You tell us what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I think pairing and partnering is actually entirely relevant. I'm huge on that. And then if you have a network, you can draw people in and make cool opportunities and make things win-win for sure. Or even something like co-presenting something with a partner. You bring your different dispositions, you bring your different knowledges together. Everybody wins by doing that. Or having a client co-present, or even a client doing a quote or something like that. So I think pairing is, I think, a really good way to do this, especially when you make it win-win.
Yeah, right, so let me put a piece in there on top of that, because sure. I think that Oliver was absolutely right about that, and Wendy kind of leans in and adds more to that bit. So my thing in this is, if you're trying to figure out who this is in your firm, let's assume your firm, wherever you are, you or they have had some success already. find the cat who's successful and stand next to him and watch how they do what they do. And that's all it's as simple as that. But there are people in any successful firm who've helped make it successful. Go find out how they did that and just watch them at work. And I think you can learn an awful lot that way. They could be a non-designated mentor to you in some way, or you could have a real mentoring relationship. But quite frankly, do what they do. That's what we do. Find successful people and do what they do.
And you know what? Often those people are super overworked. They have loads of opportunities to kind of progress, and they're probably leaving some things on the table. So if you come along and help them, you can probably take some stuff off their plate, and you may need to do some things that you're perhaps not very comfortable doing to begin with. You need to kind of learn the ropes, but there's a potential for a win-win there for sure.
Is it possible to teach?
I love that.
Is it possible to do that well into your consulting career?
If you're a learning cat, right? If you're willing to learn new tricks, I think that's absolutely it. I mean, if you think you got it figured out, this isn't going to happen for you. But I love, by the way, I want to amplify the thing that Oliver just said, because I think it's such great advice. The truly, truly successful, that top 1%, you could feed a family of 4 off the crumbs that fall on their shirt. So you ought to be able to find, if you find someone, lucky enough to find somebody like that, stand as close to them as you can get and learn everything you can.
And can I actually pivot that same idea? Because thinking about finding new clients and partners that, I'm a really good example of this, right? I do certain things. I don't do a bunch of things. So those, working in an ecosystem, finding complementary services, that's a great way to find clients. Good partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got a great example of that a couple of months ago, actually, like a consultancy that's operating in a more strategy and architecture space. Wanted some of our more kind of detailed tech kind of consultancy sort of services, and just got chatting to them, and it's great because they have a different set of clients, we have a different set of clients, and so it just works. So yeah.
And that's common, right? To when you respond to an RFP, or you are working with a client that says, I need a little bit of program and product management, but I also need like engineers to go bang on the keyboard, right? And it's like, well, the firms that do that are, either huge or, they're huge, generally speaking, right? And so the smaller firms, you really need to find like, well, we don't have those people. We can contract them in, or we can partner with somebody in our network, right, that has another small company that provides those services. And I think those make good partnerships, and sometimes they end up as mergers, right? So that's kind of another little bit. I don't know. Cool. All right. Well, listen, I think there was a lot in here of like really specific things that people can do, right? And I particularly like this idea of it boiling down to EQ, for lack of a better term, or EI. It's like I need to be able to read a person to some degree, understand kind of what their issues may be, and however I get to that point. Right. If it's checking in on them, if it's, hey, tell me what you're up to, right? If it's that sort of thing, if it's having a beer, whatever it might be. But you then need to be able to figure out, okay, how can I plug into that thing, right? And maybe I can't, but maybe I know someone that can. And, maybe they don't have a problem that I can solve, but maybe they know someone that I can help with. So, for me, like when I look at all of this and I take stuff away from this, that's kind of what I take away, which is, ask those questions, right? I'm asking good questions again, right? Back to that. I don't know. Well, Oliver, Wendy, Phil, what are you guys thinking is sort of like a takeaway for this?
So I was going to add to the EQ point, relationships, and the two are kind of somewhat intertwined, right? Because to your point, you need the EQ probably to develop and build those relationships. But the other thing I don't think we have talked about yet is something that I struggle with, and it comes back to right at the beginning around not feeling comfortable selling. And one of the things that's really uncomfortable sometimes is closing. So at what point do you move from building relationship, sharing good content, having good discussions? At what point do you try and commercialize that or close that? Okay, great. Let's now do something. I always struggled with that for long. I still do, if I'm honest. I'm much better at let's have some amazing intellectual conversation where we take apart what the problem is. I'm not so brilliant at perhaps going, right, great. And that's often why I want to bring a commercial colleague along, because they'll know when we've got to that point when we're good to start moving to perhaps having a more commercially focused conversation. So I think this is, the three parts of this for me would be definitely EQ, relationships, but then knowing when you can, identifying those signals, those buying signals for when you can then move on and convert this thing.
Pulling the trigger, making the ask, right, Wendy?
Love it. Love all of that. And again, just coming from a place of true authenticity and value and just trying to help people. That's where, the mindset, as we've said. I also just want to echo, make it easy for people, right? Make it easy for someone to take a next step with you and get something valuable and let that grow. And likewise, make it easy for partners to help you. Even things like, have an agreement in place where, you do referrals or people get a percentage of revenue, or you have some sort of a mutual sharing of what each other does. So just make it easy for people to help you as well and get new clients and partners.
Bill, yo, my dude, take us home.
Yo, my bro.
My bro.
Well, this is huge, right? And the thing is, particularly if you're in that spot in your career where you feel like this is part of your responsibility, or if the firm or wherever you're working thinks, one of the things is you do have to help us all eat, right? We have to figure out how to find these things and bring them in. So I think it's a big topic. We covered a little bit of this here today. There's lots more to be done in it. We have to get past that idea of feeling like this is an unethical thing. And again, I think a strategy for that is to look at this and say, I'm not here to sell anything to anybody, but there's somebody who wants to buy what we can do. They have problems that we are well equipped to solve. And I am simply investigating the world to find out who those people are and how we might be able to help them. So, if that's you, then let me help you. And if it's not, that's fine. We're friends, and we'll can I at least ask this, just based on where we've been, do you know somebody that I could help? Is there someone else in your network that it would make sense for me to talk to? Or my favorite way to ask that question is to look at somebody and say, if you were me and you kind of get a sense of where I am right now, who would you talk to about this? And then there's a technique for dealing with it past that. But I think this is it. We all need to eat. We all ought to be selling a little bit of ourselves along the way, because we're just looking for people to help. And it is an ethical and honorable thing to do, is to help people. I love helping people. Didn't we all get into this because we like helping people? We want to have an impact? No, we don't like people. Okay, let's imagine that for a moment that we do like people. In a moment of weakness, we say to our fellow man, I would love to be of service to you. And if in that case, let's find those people and go help them. That's all.
Awesome. I love that. Gene Gehring, hopefully that answered some of the questions that you submitted. You gave us other ones. We'll have to pick those up in another thread. And listen, if you are watching this and you think that maybe you're missing some inside jokes or some stuff that was cut out or something like that, guess what? I've got something for you. Announcing here today, live, or not live, but when this comes out, everyone will know. Patreon.com. We've established a site, right, on Patreon, and on there right now, all of season 1 of this podcast. So there's 12 episodes for free, right? They're there, just like you get. And then if you want to throw a little chotch in, give us a little scratch to help cover some of the costs of doing this thing. You can get all the stuff that was never seen. Some of it is quite hilarious, and some of it is super insightful. In fact, some of it, they're almost like entire episodes, right? There's so much like stuff in there. Just like this recording, there was so much stuff that probably only the Patreon members will be able to see. So thank you, everybody. I hope you, Wendy, I hope you feel better. Phil, always good to see you. Oliver.
Thanks, man.
I hope you're feeling good drinking your non-alcoholic beer. Yeah. Is it warm at least? You got the warm English beer?
No. It's from the fridge. But it's all gone. It's that good. It's gone.
Well, perhaps you should go to consultantsayingthings.com and go to the store that we have, and you can buy a beer mug. And we've got one. This is the coffee cup version, but we've got like the little thing. And we've got the Shadow Man on the back, right?
I am about to hit up the Consultant Saying Things merch store and get me some swag. That's for sure.
That was the ask. For all the for all the cats out there, that's the ask. Go buy some merch. Help us feed ourselves.
Yeah. Really cool.
That's it.
I like it.
Thank you, everybody.
Cool.
See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.